We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email john@nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at skipsandbins.com or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces Handmade in Cumbria. You can order them from their website, mrvickys.co.uk, or by telephoning 01768 210 102. A big thanks also to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. They are an agile and dedicated workwear provider. Welcome back as well to United Travel. They are a UK coaches firm and they are based in the Northeast. They've got 2024 tours and you can contact them on 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Email info@unitedgrouptravel.com and they've got a website which is unitedgrouptravel.com. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. Big thanks to them for their sponsorship. Big thanks as well to Media Arts, and they supply all the video technology. If you want to become a member and get a cup, a pen, a membership card, and a scarf, then get your smartphone and put it over this QR code. It will take you straight to the membership pack. It's a £25 one-off fee. You can also go to NUFC Matters website and search membership pack to book today. If you want to help the channel, then subscribe to it by hitting the subscribe button. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video and click share to share to your other social media. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. Don't forget, we help the food bank on this channel. If you want to do so virtually, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. The Alan Shearer raffle is back on. 150 tickets, £1 a ticket. Win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball. Enter today at nufcmatters.com.
Myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright.
Good morning. Welcome along to NUFC Matters. This is the Eddie Howe press conference review for the game against Manchester City in the Carabao Cup, which takes place tonight, 27th of September, and it is an 8 o'clock kickoff at St James's Park. There was no public sale for this tie. Season ticket holders who signed up for the relevant cup schemes receiving tickets for their own seats. And there has to be a winner tonight. An outcome must be achieved if the scores are level after 90 minutes. Then it is penalties. So referee in the game is Chris Kavanagh, and there is no VAR not applicable tonight in this cup competition. In the cup competition, of course, that Newcastle got to the final of last season. So the press conference review. If this is the first time you've listened, we just review the press conference. We'll give you an insight into which journalist asked the questions, because it's always an edited version that you tend to see out there, and we'll give you an idea of what actually went on in the press conference room. So Matthew Raisbeck from BBC Radio Newcastle, he started the press conference. Asked about Barnes' injury. We saw him go down in a bit of pain at Sheffield United. We didn't know what the situation was. Asked him for an update, and he said it's an injury to part of his foot, which is below the toe. It's a substantial injury. It's been scanned, and we are waiting for results. Reza then asked him, did that come from a tackle? What actually happened? He said he was pushing off to run on his foot. So the injury is very, very unusual. So we will wait and see what the outcome of that is. But, we're led to believe it's going to be a while before we see Harvey Barnes in a black and white shirt again. Are there any more injuries? Was Reza's next question. He went, there are a few issues which I'll need to assess. He says the 3-game week does test you and test your squad. I will assess the players before the game and make a decision moving forward. Reza then moved on to Anthony Gordon. Said, in all intents and purposes, he's been fantastic this season. Eddie agreed. He said he's had an outstanding start. He's got athleticism. He's added goals and assists in these early games this season. He says you want players to come in and hit the ground running, but it rarely happens. So he took time to adjust, but he's got a greater understanding of our methods now, and Newcastle will now reap the benefits. Reza just said he's clearly just going to get better and better. And Eddie said he's got a high ceiling. He then addressed that and said, I shouldn't have said that really. He says, but he's got ability. He can push on. There are areas of his game which he can improve, and we will help him improve. Reza then said, you must have great memories about the League Cup run last year. How important is that to, progressing this year? And he said, look, it is important. It's an important cup competition to us, as all the competitions are. He says, I think back to last year when we started against Tranmere. It was a difficult tie, but we managed to navigate that. He said, but yeah, the next game is important to us. We will try as hard as we can to progress in this competition, as we will in all competitions. He then brought up, Reza brought up Pep Guardiola, saying that he will make changes and freshen things. Is that what you intend to do? He said, yes, I think we will use the squad. He says, obviously, we will need to assess, the players. We'll need to assess everybody. He says there's a lot of players that haven't featured this season who are keen to impress and show what they can do. But we want, the best team to play against Manchester City, and we want the team that's in the best conditions. So those decisions were being made yesterday and will be made today. Will we see Lewis Miley, who has impressed and been in and around the first team squad, asks Reza. There is a chance, he says, but I haven't got all the information I need to make that kind of decision as yet, but he may well be in the squad. Keith Downey was next from Sky Sports. Pep Guardiola, tongue-in-cheek, said he might play himself in this game tonight. So Keith said, will you play? And he says, nah. He says, I failed the fitness test. You won't see me playing tonight. Keith then said, do you have a priority list for competitions this season, and where does the Carabao Cup feature? He categorically denied this. He went, no, there isn't a list. There's no game more important than the other. There's no competition more important than the other. And I've said this to the players. It's a dangerous mindset to have. The next game is the most important. And this is his rhetoric, which he's repeated in press conferences time and time again. Keith then said, Man City must be the game that nobody wants. Nobody wants to see this, the name drawn out the hat with Manchester City in any cup competition. And essentially, Eddie agreed. He went, yeah, it is a draw that nobody wants. They're the best club team in the world. They've got the best players in the world, and they've got the best manager in the world. But we want to attack this game like we attack every other game. We want to give a good account of ourselves, and we want to win. 8 goals in your last game. What's it done for the confidence? Asked Keith. He said, the feeling's always good around this group. The spirit is high. He says, I think what we took out of the game of the weekend is that it was 8 different scorers. The team functioned well. There was a nice rhythm. And our only hope is that we haven't used all our goals up in one game, which people chuckled at. Keith then said, I'm sure this will be a quiz question in the future, and name all 8 scorers because it's so unusual. And he said, yeah, look, he says it is. He said, I didn't realise we'd had 8 different scorers until the game had finished. He says, but, we do have goals in this team. And as a team, you do need goals coming from different areas of the pitch. And he picked out Sean Longstaff. He said it was nice to see Sean Longstaff score, and his goal was important because it was the first. Keith then moved on to Anthony Gordon, which was a flavour of this press conference. Everybody seemed to want to talk about the player in form at the moment. He said, Gordon's not had a rest. Is that going to be something that you're going to have to look at? He went, try telling him that. He says he wants to train and play every game. He said, I've tried to rest him versus Sheffield, but obviously the injury to Harvey Barnes, curtailed that, and he ended up getting more time on the pitch than we hoped for, because we were going to keep him for tonight's game. But yeah. Rest doesn't seem to be something high on the priority list for Anthony Gordon, which is good for fans to hear. Jeff Brown from the BBC asked if he had sympathy for Sheffield United after the result of the weekend. He said, yeah, I said it after the game. He said, but you can't be sympathetic to the detriment of your own team. You've got to give your best on the day. I don't think that result defines Sheffield United or defines their season. He says in a lot of cases, those kind of results can galvanise a team. And he says, I wish, Paul and Sheffield United all the best. Have you ever been on the wrong end of that kind of scoreline? Eddie said he didn't want to go back that far. He says he has been on the end of scorelines, but he didn't want to dwell on it, didn't want to think of it and put himself into a negative space, which was fair enough. Wembley last year, do you look back on it with pride or disappointment? Said Jeff. Do you feel like you didn't do yourself justice? And he said, I wouldn't say we didn't do ourselves justice. He says, the first goal in that game was key. He says, but what do I take out of it? I take pride. We take away the experience, getting there, the semi-final, etc. But it is tinged with disappointment because we didn't win it. Simon was next. Simon from ITV, Simon O'Rourke. Is it difficult to process a result like 8-0? And he just said, yeah, look, he says, you just take the good out of it, and you hope that it spreads through the squad. He says we don't analyze it too much. It's one of those games. It's one of those results. But yeah, we move on to the next game. That was all Simon asked yesterday. Damien was next. Do you fear that you're going to lose Harvey Barnes for a while with this injury? And this is where he said, yeah, it's going to be months longer than weeks, which was greeted with a bit of a groan in the press room, and everybody who's a Newcastle fan was very disappointed, not more so than Harvey Barnes, of course. He then moved on to Trippier. Damien said 3 assists in the game of the weekend. Is he the model for the young fullbacks that you have at the club? And he went, yeah, he's technically so good. His use of the ball, his creativity is second to none. His set-piece delivery is second to none. And he's been exceptional again this season. He's also so good off the pitch with his leadership skills, and he essentially drives this squad forward. So yes, he's certainly somebody that the young fullbacks at the club should look up to. Jordan was next. He said, you've kept clean sheets in the last 3 clean sheets in the last 3 games. How much work has gone into that? And he said, we work on it every day. We try not to neglect things. We've got a set way of working. We do our work that we need to do going into each game. But he says, I think the last 3 games have shown a steeliness in the squad and in the back 4 in particular. He says in Milan, Nick Pope was outstanding. But yes, very happy with it, but not something that they don't slacken on any of the training departments. It's something they do each week. It's just the way that football goes sometimes. You've got 3 good goalkeepers at the club. Is this a chance for one of those goalkeepers to stake a claim in the Carabao Cup tonight? Maybe, he said, but we will look at it and we will see. So it didn't give anything away. Craig Hope was up next. He said, you mentioned other issues to players. Is there anything you can share with us? Any other players that you want to mention? You went, we will see today, which was, of course, yesterday. So you will have assessed them by now. He then moved on to an incident which happened in the past. You might remember Anthony Gordon being substituted and showing a little bit of anger towards Eddie Howe. He says, how important was that, to Anthony, and has that incident spurred him on to become the player that he's become so far this season? Eddie said, I don't know. You'll have to ask him. It was one of those things which, I said that at the time. It was one of those things. But he says, you've got to ask Anthony about it. He was just showing passion. It turned into 3 points for us, which he was pivotal in gaining for us. And the substitution was tactical. It was part and parcel of him growing and developing and learning. But I don't want him to lose that edge to his game. He then mentioned Callum Wilson, of course, who, talks about England quite openly around the training ground. Is the talk about Gordon potentially playing for the national team at the top level? Eddie said he hasn't talked about England as such, but he's talked about the summer success, of course. He's passionate about his career. Eddie says, I want him to focus on the areas that he has to improve, and the rest will come. And, if he's got ambitions to play for England, then good for him. Luke Edwards was next. He seems to make it a bit of a comedy these days when he's in. Luke, can I have the team for tomorrow, please? Eddie said no. Everybody laughed. He says, hold on, let me turn towards you. And then he said, no, in fact, no. I'll turn back. Because obviously he was facing a different direction. Luke then asked, are the young fullbacks going to play tomorrow? And he went, possibly. Well, actually, no, I can't answer that question. So it was a bit of comedy between the two of them. He then put his serious face on and he said, look, patience is the key for young players. Both young fullbacks have got rich potential. We'll possibly see whether they're involved tomorrow. Luke then moved on to Pep's press conference, where he basically said that he wasn't going to win. He said, I'm paraphrasing here. Pep said he's not going to waste 1 minute on this cup competition. He said, is he trying to soften you? And typical Eddie, he said, well, I didn't see the interview and I don't believe it for a second. Martin was next, Martin Hardy. He mentioned that English managers haven't won a trophy in 15 years. How important is it for you to win a trophy and to maybe become that manager? And he went, wow, that's a long time. He said, I'd love to end that run, but ultimately my aim is to bring silverware to Newcastle United. That's my main aim. Why has it been so long, says Martin? I don't know, is my honest answer, he said, and I don't want to overanalyze it. Do you find yourself or feel like you're carrying the beacon for English managers? And he went, I don't feel like that at all. I just feel like I'm trying to do the job at the best of my ability. Martin then asked him about Anthony Gordon. He just said, how hungry is he? You say that he's always last off training and he doesn't want to miss a game. He just says since he came to the club, he's been driven. There's work that he wants to do to improve, and he's fiery in a good way. But yeah, he's a consummate professional who wants to do well, and we will help him do that. Dom Skir was next. He mentions the final again last season, and did it hit home? The heroic status. The players will receive if they win a trophy. And he said, look, I think this squad know how passionate the fans are. They know that they'll love you if you do well, and this group of players want to win a trophy for these fans because they appreciate the love and support that they get from them. Dom Skir then asked about Anthony Gordon. He says, looking at Anthony Gordon, it took him a while to settle. Is there an acceptance now within the club that it takes time for players to bed in? Maybe Sandro will have a good second half to the season. Eddie didn't want to get drawn on the Sandro situation. He said, without talking about a particular player, he went, for young players, it can be difficult. For foreign players, it can be difficult. It takes time. It's natural from people outside coming into the club won't understand exactly what we're trying to achieve here and how we do it. He says, and that's why sometimes when people think a player should be thrown into the mix, that they're not picked, and fans might be wondering why. He says, it's because I work with them day to day and I will pick the strongest team. He says, we look every week and every day, at things that, new players will discover and develop. And when the penny drops about what we want them to achieve, they tend not to look back. So quite a good answer that I felt, and gives you a bit more of an understanding, and really should send out that message to Newcastle fans who do get a little bit nervous that, don't get nervous. Eddie's on the ball. He knows what he's doing. Another Dom was next. He said, Elliot Anderson's been good in a variety of positions. Which is his best one? He didn't answer the question, really. He just said, I don't think he's got a best position. He answered it, but not the way that he was expecting. He just said he's versatile. He said, I thought he was excellent on Sunday. He was behind lots of our good football and creativity. He didn't get a goal, which he would have been disappointed about. He's got a wonderful defensive capability. He's got a great body swerve. He's very good at one-on-ones. I mean, he waxed lyrical about him, really. It was really, if that was a CV, it would be fantastic. So Elliot Anderson, he must be buzzing with the way that he feels about the way the gaffer feels about him. He then mentioned Bruno scoring. Any update on his contract? No update. Shortest answer in the press conference. George was next. He said, it's a big blow for Harvey Barnes. How is he personally? How is he mentally? And he was down after the game. He knew it wasn't a normal injury. He feared the worst. He will be disappointed because he probably felt that Sunday was a really good chance to show what he could do. But we will support him. We'll get him back to full fitness, and there's more to come from him later in the season. Is it a huge challenge for you, for your team physically and psychologically? How do you deal with that balance? Was George's next question. He said, as I said before, Sheffield, it's difficult to measure the psychological effect that a game like Milan will have on you. He says you can't get a reading on that. He says so. It's something that we'll work on, but it's very difficult to get an idea on it. Lee Ryder was next, asking about the 2-11s. You gave a 2-11s narrative last season. That's what you wanted. He says, have you got the ability to be able to take an 11 out and put an 11 in? And he said, we're building towards that. He says, you saw last week with the changes we made, that we can rotate the squad. He says, we've not seen everyone yet. He says, and the only thing that'll imbalance this is injuries. We've had injuries in the midfield. Now we've got an attacking injury with Harvey Barnes out. He says, and injuries can stretch you, but so far we haven't been stretched. How important is it to absorb the fans' support? Was another one from Lee. And he went, very important. He says we saw two different games, brought two different sets of emotions. He says the Brighton defeat, we went over, we spoke to, we applauded the fans, and he said the support was incredible. They were singing, they were cheering, and he says that wasn't lost on the players. That even though we got beat, they still were there to support us. He said we understand that if we don't do well, then we have to take criticism, but it's just great to have the kind of support that we have. No matter what the score, and it's very important to the players. Lee then mentioned Callum Wilson moving ahead of Soles in the goal scoring charts, and he said, he's clearly on top form. Could he get close to Shearer? And he said, well, I did see the graphic on TV at the weekend. He says, and seeing how far Alan ahead is the biggest compliment you can pay to him. He says, but Callum's in a really good place, and he'll just want to score goals. Kieran was last on today, asking about history. He says, you had a chat about history and how important it is to potentially win that trophy. Have you had that before today's game? And he went, I am a current believer of those kind of things. I think they can help in the dressing room, he said, but this game's not the right time for that. We do want to take this competition seriously, and we do want to win it. So there we go. That was Eddie's press conference in a nutshell. Good to see as many of you in the chat. Ian McKenna says he's got a very small mouth already. He uses it very sensibly, Ian. Morning, Kevin. Morning, Les. And Ian says, hinted Miley may play in as much as he ever gives anything away. And he said, maybe. Yeah, he could definitely be in the squad. That's certainly that. And I would love to see him. I would like to see him, at least part of the squad and get a run out. Trolls, good to see you in the chat as well. Darren Lee, good morning. I take it Barnes is going to be out till December. There's no confirmation as yet. Just said months rather than weeks. And yeah, it is something which, is very strange. Darren says he suffers from tendonitis on the ankle, which is awful. I wouldn't want a toe injury to go with it. Paul, good morning. Good to see you there as well. Andrew, good morning as well. Good to see you in the chat. Anyone made any more points before I finish this morning? A plus point is Barnes is very fit, so could reduce out the time. Les, good point as well. Hopefully he's back for January or February playing again if everything goes according to plan. I think December might be a decent bet. Months, as rather than weeks would suggest Christmas time. Coming back for the busy season, busy Christmas period. Sorry. Dub could start. You never know. Although he did seem to knock that question down and talk essentially about play any stronger squad. So maybe Pope will play tonight with it being Manchester City. I wouldn't play Dubravka tonight. I would probably play Pope, and Les agrees with us there as well. Morning, Treven Steele. Good to see you, or Trevin Steele. Sorry for the mispronunciation if it was wrong. But yeah, great to have you all on. I will be back tonight, 6 o'clock with Melly, with a Premier League show. We'll obviously be looking ahead to the match as well. 8 o'clock kickoff, so I can squeeze that in at 6 before the game. But thanks everybody for watching. Please click the like button, the little thumb underneath, and please give it a share. Take care, guys.